Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I'm having a conversation today with Melissa, and I'm excited and introduce her in a second. Some housekeeping, please put your questions in the Q&A section. I'm sure we'll have a lot of them. But I am super excited for my conversation today with Melissa from Holland Knight. I'm going to start with that. I love your title because I think in and of itself, it says so much. And I'm going to say your title out loud. So Melissa is the manager of AI and legal technology adoption. So, Melissa, tell us about yourself and your role at the firm.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it very much. And thank you for the question. Actually, I get it a lot. Like, what do you do again? And 6 months ago, of course, my job didn't exist. And so I think that we're all going to see that quite a bit. So I'll tell you what I do. I am involved with all the adoption of AI tools. And what that really means is very simple. I need to make sure that people find reasons to continue using it and that they find value in its output. That's it.
I love that. And that actually is going to provide, a lot of fuel for our conversation today. So appreciate that. And it just shows a lot of forethought in that title that I think you helped craft within that. Um, let's start with something that, you're all around everywhere. Those that don't know who you are, but you're all over the place. You'll be in New York, tomorrow, speaking with Microsoft. But what adoption trends are you seeing within the legal community?
Yes, of course. So we've been through a really long journey, okay? And in that journey, we found that there's many pieces that need to come together, some that we'll talk about today. But I think that where we are today, right now, is we are shifting from curiosity to commitment,
Hmm.
okay? Finally, we're at the point where law firms, but every other business, really, for the most part, unless you're a plumber or, a mechanic, every other business is probably saying, you know what? Okay, I'm in. Let's do this. This is not going anywhere, right? And so it is about the time where we're starting to think, how do we use this positively and how do we get value? So I think that's where we are now, where before we used to be in I'm just going to play around with it. Now people are looking for workflows. They're looking for, how is this better now than it used to be? Right? All these other questions. So that's where I
Yeah,
think we are.
I think that comes back to any sort of technology. I think people are, you know, kind of forget where we came from, like any type of technology. Let's say AI wasn't here, like ROI, what's the ROI? How can we improve as you said, the workflows of the firm? And this is just another level of technology to a much greater extent of being able to evolve and change the law firm. But the thing is that just like you would measure anything else in the past, hey, we're going to put this new practice management system in the past. What features do we need? What's the ROI? How can we make things more efficient? Things like that. Similar for AI, right?
Yeah, well, actually, right now, I think the strong focus is on practical adoption, but on specific tools. So I think that people are picking their partner, okay? And they're realizing that they need more than one because it's not an easy button that can do it all, right? So they're finding the Harveys, the co-counsels, the Lagoras of the world. And then, of course, there's Copilot. And so that's like turning into, I translate it into a document management system. Everybody has one, there's tons of them out there. And you need to save different types of documents, so you need different specialties, and that's why we have different ones that we'll need throughout. And every firm is now, because of these tools in their journey, they're now to the point where they're investing in training
Yeah.
and governance and in their culture just as much as they are their technology.
Yeah, and you use the word governance. I think that is often left out, and I think that's a big area where we're going to see a lot of involvement over the next year or so within the governance of that. And so AI, all over the place, inexplicably, inescapably mentioned all over the place. So for firms that might not have really put their toes in the water so much yet, what resources do you find that are good for them to get like the basics of what's possible? To think of it like in an entry level 101 course to what the firms possible with an AI if they haven't yet started or dabbled in it?
Sure. I think that it's about curiosity. And so everybody should be curious enough to go and find their own information. And there's a lot of sources that are not in the firm. I'm not suggesting you go outside of your firm in order to get to practice. Okay. I am suggesting that you find the information where it's available. That means speak to your cousin, speak to your friend, your neighbor, and ask them, what is it that you're actually doing? Right. But also go to the website that's linked to the major players. They all offer free training, right? So if you go to Anthropic, they have it. Go to Microsoft, they have it. Go to, any tool, go to their web page, and then you'll have information. But then on top of that, what's the resource of the world? YouTube, right? Go to YouTube and then find people that you can connect with. And that really is going to depend on what you want to learn, because I can give you many people that I follow, but I'm focused on adoption. Now, if that's your thing, then I highly, highly recommend that you go to my LinkedIn. That's probably easier because I follow kind of the same people on YouTube, and take a look at who I'm following. But that's another resource, LinkedIn. People offer free information, meaning people like me, people like you, Michael, doing
Yeah.
these webinars, right? People that are actually in LinkedIn offering free training. LinkedIn has a fantastic, fantastic training library that you can tap into. And then for those of us in legal tech, there's ILTA. I don't know if how many people are familiar here with ILTA, but our friends offer great resources of people that of content that's built of people like you or me. I build content for them too. There's webinars and everything. So if you're a member, use the resources they have available. They even offer content in Spanish. So get your hands on any video, any clip, and any person that has any experience, because more than likely, you have something they don't know, and I have something that I don't know. And so by building a community, that's your probably your most valuable resource. Because people will call me sometimes and be like, "Do you know what dropped today?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I haven't gotten to reading it. What happened?"
Yeah.
So
I
that's
think
what I
that's
would
the thing.
suggest.
That's the thing you and I chatted about in the past. It's like building that community around it. It's something that's like you don't keep it to yourself. We're at this
Mhm,
early. I still feel like we're really early at this nascent stage of what AI really is
mhm,
possible,
mhm,
and it is evolving at really what I'll call a snowball's pace, like very quickly if it's rolling down a mountain.
mhm.
And things change on a daily basis. That's how great it is, which is very different from any other area of technology improvement, is that this pace of improvement in there, and it can be overwhelming for people, but as you said, just build a community, get more information one step at a time. I love LinkedIn has turned out to be an amazing resource. It started out from this small platform, now it's like this amazing resource for business people, so appreciate that. And ILTA, for those who don't know, it's ILTA. You can search for it on the web. Most people do, but if you don't, search for it. A lot of great content. They just had their conference back in August. So, being we're just talking about adoption, how do you get buy-in from different levels within the law firm from AI adoption? You've got, partners, managing partners. It could be if it's a large law firm, CFOs, CIOs, and you've got the staff and the financial people. And how do you get buy-in?
Sure, that's a great question, because that's something that you cannot move forward, at least with strong step hold, right? Unless you have buy-in from leadership. And so I think that it's not just about them though. For the first time ever, this isn't a top-down adoption or a bottom up. This is a left to right, right to left, sideways to upwards, in every direction adoption. And so we have to meet people where they're at, Michael. We
Hmm.
have to give them what they need. So you were just saying, well, what about partners? What do they care about? They care about value and they care about risk. Most of the partners that I speak, and I'm not talking about my firm, I'm talking about the universe of people that I speak with, they're always saying, like, well, wait a minute. Where is this information coming from? Where is it learning it from? People that have experience at any level, at any in any industry, are mostly concerned about that. So I think that's where we focus with them. But then associates, well, they care about time. They care about efficiency. And so we have to meet them there. We have to show them that yes, you can not just save time, but use time to your advantage, right? It's about that strategy. And so we have to meet them there. And then if we talk about any professional staff, finance, HR, you name it, what do they care about? They care about accuracy. They care about usability. They want to know that what I'm doing is correct. Now, that's never going to be true because, you pilot, not co-pilot, right? You have to make sure. But for the most part, that's what they're expecting. So we have to show them how that works. And then finally, everybody in the world is interested in trust. They're all worried about it somehow, some way. So I think that if we focus our core objectives to be on build around the trust of these tools. And I don't mean by blindly trusting them, because by the way, there's something called sycophancy, which means they are built to work with you and to tell you how fantastic you are. But I mean trust as in I trust that it can help me. And with my guidance and its guidance, we can build together. If you're able to believe that and put that in the core of your strategy and then meet them where they're at, I think that's how you can target it.
And if we go off a topic that some people will always ask you is, with that trust comes like some people worried about their job security, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
I can be phased out by this. What's happening? So do you get that? I'm sure you hear it or around there. What do you say to that?
Oh my God, I get it all the time. And not just from people I work with, from my friends, from people. They're like, wait a second, what do you think about that? And, I'll tell you what I think. I think that every single job is going to be replaced 100%. But that doesn't mean that we're going to dump everybody in the garbage, right? That means that we all need to transform, that we all need to. My job didn't exist 6 months ago, right? I started by saying that. And it probably will create many alike. Many other firms will see that title and they'll decide that this is something that they need too. Just like we will find other ways of doing things through technology. See, technology used to be the base of something. Like, you need a ladder to get to the second floor, but you could also use an elevator, right? Okay. Whereas with AI is not your ladder and it's not your elevator. AI is your building. AI is the city you're putting that building in. Like AI is helping you build that next building next to it, right? And so, with that in mind, you have to, absolutely have to, be able to be curious safely, right? You also be able to, you have to be able to connect across your organization and realize where is the need, right? Where is that need so that I can fill it and then I can transform my job, but not just to transform my job or to save me, but to transform that layer of the organization. Okay. When that layer gets transformed, if I, Michael, work with you in providing you information that you then do your job and somebody else does their job on top of that, if we all provide that next layer, something more, whatever that more is, better, brighter, you call it, I think you're going to do a better job too. And our product ultimately will be transformed as a whole, just like our organizations.
Yeah, 100%. And that word, I'll add a few letters to it. Transformative. It's transformative. It's transformative for all of us. And I liken it. If we look back way 150 years ago, the Industrial Revolution, things like that, where people were hand looming rugs. Not that they don't do it these days, but much less so. Things change,
Hmm.
things evolve. Technology revolution. Just gotta lean into it. Lean into it. And love what you said about that. So you mentioned the word safe. So how do we go about using, I know we could speak for hours on how do we go about in a basic sense using AI safely without really slowing down the progress of it? We We've heard some interesting things where people wrote things, submitted court papers to the judge, they don't check the citations and they get sanctioned, things like that. But how do we go about like what's the safe way to use it on a basic level?
Sure. So safety and speed are not really opposites. They have to be partners. I mean, today, okay, in today's world, because we are moving, as we've mentioned, at a really, really fast speed. And so it's not about slowing down, it's about moving forward along with the technology. And in order to do it safely, in order to not just run and be the first one and fall down and look up and be like, why didn't anybody tell me? Right? Uh, we have to do it together. If we all fall at the same time, guess what? It's going to hurt less and we're going to all rise together. So if we are able to, again, build a community around it in a safe way so that we build pilot programs. We have clear policies. People need to understand that shadow accounts, meaning your chat GPT that you're using to help you with your work. And by the way, you're not paid free chat GPT account. So if you are doing that, by the way, anything free, if the product is free, the product is you. Okay. So that means you need to start paying for that service and you need to turn off the setting on their data controls that allows for them to collect your information to improve their model. Okay. So safety, it's not just about doing it together and it's about more than that. It's about telling other people how and why. And it's about doing it in the safety net of your network, your tenants. So whatever your law firm is providing, that is exactly what you should be using. And if they're not providing anything, you need to pay for your service. You need to make sure that your settings are correct, that you have everything checked off, that you've reviewed all the settings and agreements, read everything and then use it safely. Go to all the resources we talked about. Learn, ask people. That's all I can say.
Well, I mean, let's go a little further on that because, people might not have realized that, right? So, when they subscribe to their free chat GPT account and, let's assume they haven't got any direction to the firm yet, if we're talking about some smaller firms,
Mhm,
and they're using that, if they haven't thought about it, the data privacy concerns, the client data exposure that could take place on a free account versus the
mhm.
paid account, why that's important, if you could spend a minute or so on that.
Absolutely. It's so important because see, people think, "Oh, it's free, I'll just talk to it." Like, what's the harm in somebody knowing about my travels or the things that I am curious about in life? Well, guess what? Those are your thoughts, and those thoughts are worth money to somebody because that means that there's an algorithm that could be created around your process, your thoughts, your location, your age group. There's a market for everything and everyone. So there's a reason why Facebook hasn't charged one dime and yet is worth, I don't know, millions, billions, I don't even know,
Many
right?
billions, yeah, many billions.
Exactly. So there you go. See, I don't even know how much, but the point is nothing in this world is free. Nothing.
Right. And I would say that, one things that people don't realize, you hit on it, is that the data is as equally or more important than the AI. The data they're collecting is used in a billion different ways, and that data is only to become more and more valuable. That's the platinum. It's worth trillions of dollars out there, and so that data that they're collecting there, which is again why you want to use paid tools, not free tools, as well as you have risk of exposing privileged client data and things like that out there. So
Mhm,
you got to make sure. And that goes back to what something we said originally up front, you said up front, is data governance. We're going to start to see that, and maybe we'll have a webinar soon about that, about data governance and what that means around AI and how protections and things like that. We could spend a long time chatting about that, but that is the next evolution because I think you
mhm.
know it's coming after the AI tools are out there now, and the governance is now is going to get. Ooh, let's take a step back and like
You
look
know,
at that, you know?
and before we move from this topic, I just want to highlight one more time that paying for it doesn't mean they're not using your information. Paying for it enables you to use additional tools, but they can still collect, and as a default, and when I say they, I'm talking about ChatGPT, which is the most, the most uh commonly used out there for those that are in legal, at least so far I've heard, but there's a million others, and I'm sure that every one of those tools has the same exact setting in place, which is under the settings, there's a data control that says you will be sharing, your information is being shared so that they can improve their model.
Appreciate that. I'm glad you highlighted that. And so you're out there all over the place. You talk to firms of all sizes and people from everywhere. How are other firms that you chat with handling this shift?
Sure. Well, I think that everybody, like I said before, is now committing. So they're picking a tool or several tools. And now they're moving forward with researching, doing drafting, and of course, a lot of client communication, communications in general. And I think that that's true for most people. I actually was listening to a podcast the other day, and I forget who it was, but they said, oh, most people are using Copilot. There's no value because most people are using Copilot to answer emails. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fair enough if you're not using it productively or effectively. But that goes to show that a lot of people are focused on the communication side of things, improving their communication, their response time to communications, those type of things. And then lastly, I think that now you're going to see, or you're seeing a lot more training. Before it was a myth, go find it yourself. What are the resources? But now they're actually offering either training that's offered by the vendors, if they're like smaller firms, or they're bringing people in to do different, different workshops and things of that nature. So I think that's a little bit more prevalent now. Before it was just a simple figure it out on your own, let us know what you're doing if you're doing something, and yeah, you can't use it anyway.
I think you're right. Those workshops and those trainings, they're important to help, again, spread out the message of what it is. Because a lot of people ask me, I gotta have a meeting with somebody next week about this. Hey, how can we use it within a firm? What do we do? Whatnot? Usually I say, let's take a step back. What kind of law do you practice? How does the firm workflow now? Things like that, and where can we pick and choose before you pick the tool? You pick where you think you can do it, and then you look for the tool. Go work backwards. Actually, I don't know if you agree with that.
I do. I do. I mean, I think that it all depends also on your culture, on how people are learning, because attorneys are very different from, carpenters, from, technologists, from, e-discovery people, from, everything. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And that's where training is great when it's focused on something that is relevant. So if you're just going to generalize everything, the output or the adoption rate might not be the same. And I think that really ties into how people use it daily, right? So how much you use it, and how much it triggers you to, ooh, can it also do this? That is going to depend on your usage.
Yeah, it's you hit on something that's really super important. Is it's a different way that we have to think when we approach using AI, and it
Hmm.
does evolve. If you think early on, if you were doing like Westlaw searches back, when it first came out in the late '80s, how that logic you had to use to do it, you had to think differently on that. Those Boolean searches and things like that. And then obviously there was, before even Google, there was some searching out there on the web, and search tools now everyone pretty much either uses Google out there for most things. But even your thought process, if you search for something in Google and I search for something in Google, we might search for the same thing totally different ways because our minds think. So it is evolving your thought processes of thinking differently on it. And I think there'll be workshops around that to get you to build out that creative brain around that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a mindset change.
Yeah,
1000%.
yeah.
Okay. People have to think with the idea of how can I do what I'm doing now better? How can I improve it? How can I change what I am building right now because I have this additional help? This isn't about how do I use AI. It's not about doing the same thing you're doing now with AI, which seems to be a lot of what people try. And then they feel like, well, it doesn't do it like I do it, so forget it. It doesn't work. Right? So
100%.
it's you have to be very specific on that.
Yep. I appreciate that. Now, a lot of people on this webinar are probably going to be saying, hey, I want to hear the tools Melissa uses and are being used or what she's heard out there. So everyone always wants to know. So what tools that people can get started and play with would be helpful within law that you enjoy using and out there? Just share some tidbits.
Sure. I think that there is that question is a I guess it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but I'll start with defining AI and generative AI, two separate things. So, generative AI is your chat service, right? Those that you speak English to, they process or translate in tokens, and they answer in English to you. You can have conversations like Microsoft Copilot, like ChatGPT, like Perplexity, like all of those, right? They're all tools that are built to have conversations. Okay. They're not built to either listen to your life story in 20,000 words and then act on it. Because, by the way, there's something very important that people need to consider, and that's called the context window. All right. There is a maximum number of tokens. That's what these tools speak in, right? That is linked to that window, to that space where you insert the information and it absorbs it so that it can answer you. So if you, for example, use a link and say, go to this page or go to this article and review it, and based on that, create blah, 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 and then you tell your whole life story, that link is part of that content window, which means that that token count is increased automatically by the amount of words that are included in that link. And now what happens with that is it's not going to tell you, oh, I've reached my limit. It's going to start dropping tokens. And it's going to start dropping tokens on the front load, which means the information that you put in first is going to start dropping. So that's when it starts to not make sense. And you have to start again, or you have to reiterate something so that you're back on track. Right. So
It's a
just
great point.
keep that in mind.
That's a great point. And somebody saying, I have to reiterate to the computer what I said before. I can't remember. But you're
Yeah.
100% right, because I've actually had that experience with different things. Like if you ask something that doesn't come back in the right context, you say, well, you have to revisit. It's very interesting. You feel like you're having a conversation at times and whatnot. But anyhow, that's great. This has been awesome so far. I'm just checking to see if we have any questions in the chat. So do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, we do. The first question is, I see value in utilizing AI more on the operations side. What percentage of law firms are utilizing AI in their revenue cycle operations in particular?
So I'm
Well,
not entirely sure I have the answer to that. Sorry, Michael, you're going to say
yeah,
something.
I think what that means is, on we didn't really touch on it this time, but in
Mhm,
the reporting aspects and whatnot, in my using AI as that looks into my financial system, looks at my accounts receivable and the rates of collection and the reporting on the time and utilization, things like that. We're
mhm,
definitely starting to see a lot of progress towards that end, being able to answer like kind of natural language questions and get answers to those reportings out there. I don't know what the percentage is. I would say right now, I think it's maybe probably 10%. But we come back 1 year from now, that's going to be
mhm.
that is a tremendous area of growth within that. That I call it data mining, right? We've got all this data and the ability to have these AI tools that go in there and ask natural language questions and be able to pull out that data. So that's a good question.
So what I was going to say actually is I don't know the percentage either, but I was going to say that I don't think many people are using generative AI for that purpose, right? I think that there's a lot of tools, like you said, that are being built with specific connections to the data that already exists and exploiting that. So creating even bots, right? Things that you can connect the pieces together and ask questions. But as far as like having, for example, as Copilot to go do my time entry and things of that nature, like I don't think anybody is doing. It's not capable, first off, but also I don't think that anybody is focusing any of their resources there.
100% agree with you.
Next question, what are your top recommendations for starting to get AI adoption in a firm?
I would say the first thing is you have to align your AI strategy with your mission and your vision. I always say it, if you don't know where you're going, any bus will take you. And once you get to the end of that route and you find out that's not where you want to be, then we are in trouble. And that's really costly. So that's the first thing. So ask yourself, like, what problems are we actually trying to solve with AI? What is it that we're trying to get to? That's the first thing. And then, of course, always, always, always focus on not just the return on the investment. Focus on the return on the experience. Are your employees feeling more supported? Do they have access to information that is helping them create and build things that are transforming your actual organization? Like but find ways of measuring that, because that is also important and you will never be able to really quantify it. But if you ask it, if you experience it, if you talk to people, you'll find out.
It's a great point.
And
Mia?
then one more, I have some confusion about tokens and links. How do I describe this to my firm in more layman's terms?
Sure, no problem. So tokens is the language that these tools speak. Okay, so imagine that we're going to talk to somebody in China. So we're going to have to learn their language or even their dialect, right, in order to be able to communicate. And so with these tools, yes, they are understanding the English or Spanish or any language you speak to them. But when you hit send, they don't speak the language. They process it in something called tokens. And so instead of zeros and ones, now we're using tokens. And a token is a quarter of a word, a space, something, a character. And that approximately, it could be like a space, whatever. That's what a token is. And the links piece, what I was saying is, let's say your content window has a 100,000 token limit. That means it can only absorb that many tokens in one shot to process and respond back to you. But if in that prompt that you type in, you put a link, and this is only if your tool has access to the internet. So if it's a Copilot, for example, or a ChatGPT that can go over to a link, find out that information, and then answer you. That link content, if it's a table, if it's a paragraph, if it is a whole, 2,500 billion word article, is going to automatically be added to that token count. So if your limit is exceeded, if it goes over that 100,000 token limit, that extra tokens, the extra 100 billion pages it didn't read, will not be considered, and it's not going to tell you that. So it's only going to answer based on that amount, 100,000 tokens. Up until that point, I can read. And after that, I have no idea. But then once you start iterating, you have a conversation, because that's the idea, right? You have a conversation and then you get better results based on how you start to dig deeper. But as you do that, again, we're increasing the amount of information that it's handling in its memory so that it can continue to tell you what it is that we're talking about. And so if you told it 30 messages ago that John and Paul are cousins, and we're now at the point where we're talking about John's great, great, great grandparents, it may not remember who John is. So it's good to say, remember, John is the great, great, great nephew of whatever it is. Make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I think you used a good word there, iterative. Like, this is iterative technology. it just doesn't give you like necessarily what you want right away. You have to just keep digging and digging. That's why I think that maybe some classes and lessons about how to do that to get something out of it, doing that. But that iterative process is really cool. It's great. And as you said, even though it's a computer, you assume it remembers, you have to actually sometimes point back to what you said before. So it is kind of interesting. Great conversation. Was there any other questions, Mia?
Yes, there is one more. So AI won't replace, quote, attorneys or paralegals. So can you expand on why you mentioned it would replace people? The output is still somewhat hallucinating and can't do high-level analytical tasks.
Okay, so I sincerely apologize if that's what was translated. My token count might have been exceeded at that point. I meant to say that every single job is going to be transformed, not replaced. So what you're doing right now, let's say you're a paralegal and you are, let's say, reviewing 500 spreadsheets of information. Normally, you would have to do the lookups and do this and then get services to help you and get a list going and all this very manual work in order to be able to do your job. Now, if you're able to figure out how to use AI to produce something that will get you to the finish line in a way that will not only produce what you're doing today, right? But let's say if your result today is here is the list of the people and here is a list of the companies and here is the list of whatever, that report, if you look at it and say, wait a minute, what is the reason for this? Like, what do we want to get to? And can I use AI to develop something that is better than that original 3 pieces that I manually create? So that the output that we are producing as a firm stands out from everybody else because your creativity and your brain and your experience is what's making this process different. So absolutely, AI will never be able to replace you. It doesn't learn without you by its side. It has expiration dates. Every single LLM was created at a particular date, and so the information is held up until that date. So it will never replace any of us. The human has to remain in the loop. All I'm saying is you can be transformed with it, and you will eventually have to be somehow.
And I'll also say that you will evolve. You will actually become almost indispensable to the firm if you learn these tools and empower yourself to do it. You will evolve so much. But I'm going to say something that technology has already done. Like if we look early on, in the early 80s, mid 80s when technology started, it was probably like one paralegal for every lawyer back then. And then technology started to get better, and so it was 2 to 1, and then 3 to 1. So like we might see it thin down a little bit, but that's again the role is going to evolve. What you do is going to evolve if you just embrace it and enjoy the ride. This is an amazing time. This is unlike any other shift within our evolution of humanity. Like this is that, use the word transformative, and it will be.
Exactly. And so, just to your point, Michael, so before it was one paralegal to one attorney. Now, a paralegal has a paralegal assistant. That didn't exist back then, right?
Yep.
And then there's other office services people that are also involved in the process. A paralegal can consult, can work with hand in hand with an e-discovery person that helps them with it. Like none of that existed originally.
100%.
So all of those jobs were generated because of technology. And there's a million other jobs that will also be generated because of AI. All I'm saying is be transformative and be open to the opportunity.
And the job roles, we don't know what they are. Like if we chat here 5 years from today, there'll be these new roles that we just didn't even see happening in 10 years. It's been great chatting with you. We could chat for hours.
I
Melissa, it's been
agree.
awesome. I appreciate everyone being on today, and feel free to reach us on LinkedIn. My name is Michael Glasser, Melissa Ballesteros at Holland Knight as well. And we'll be reaching out to send you some more information. And again, thanks for being here, Melissa. Look forward to doing maybe more of these with you as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the invitation. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.